It's online. It's online now.
Oh, David's there.
We just got to do something in a second.
Oh, gone. Oh, gone. Oh. Sit.
I'm back. Do you know, that wasn't too painful. Painless, painful. We're online. Do you see? It was just a little bit of technology there. Little bit, right? So I've got my post-it note for today, right? So I've got, this is my equity diary. So I just thought, right, okay. So all the only thing I had in today was I need to do something great. That's what we're doing. So I just wanted to thank everybody who managed to pay their fees over Christmas, and hopefully you had a great Christmas time. And we managed to get, what was it, 5 YouTube sort of lecture thingamajigs out over Christmas and New Year's Eve. And if you didn't get them all, I sent them on loads of emails and stuff to you all. And there was one about mound builders in America. There was one about the Stargate and ancient Egypt. And the other ones as well. So hopefully, if you haven't seen them, you haven't. But if you have, then great. And that obviously kept you busy over Christmas. And I'm so pleased to have you all back now, tonight. And it's a new year, and we're bang into the Romans. So the way we're going to do the Julius Caesar thing today is my inimitable, brilliant way. And we're not really going to be focusing too much on the historical stuff. I just want us to get into the nitty gritty with a nice few images, which are all lined up. And hopefully we'll have a good time tonight. So Andy, anything you want to say other than a hidden wall on the coast of Burgundy, which we'll do next week?
Ooh.
No, I've got nothing to add, I'm afraid. I've had a very quiet time. And Happy New Year to you all.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Happy New Year, Andy. And a sea wall in Burgundy. There was a woman scantily dressed with a snorkel taking photographs, so I had to be really careful not to use that tonight. Anything from you, David?
No, thank you.
Drina, I tell Happy New Year, David. Exactly. And also you look at that, my new glasses, don't they look great? They I can't see a thing, but they're great. I look good. I went into the opticians. I said, look, I with my glasses I can see 20 meters in front of me, my old glasses, but in the dark I could only see 10 meters. I thought, oh god, I'm going to be stopped. So I decided to get these glasses, right? And there was a weird experience I had a couple of days ago, and which I don't want to tell you about, which I won't tell you about unless Margaret asks. Anything from you, Drina?
No, not this time.
Drina, don't ask what I wanted to tell you, Margaret. Just don't ask that one, please.
Go on, Margaret.
Yeah, you're not.
Go on, tell us.
Hang on, hopefully she'll have forgotten in a second, because I'm going to ask Kate a question. Right, go on, Kate.
What?
Save me, Kate. Hang on, you opened your mouth then, Kate.
Did I?
Barked. I don't think that's good.
No,
yeah,
my
you did. It didn't. No, it's not good.
It's completely unrelated, and it was. I was tweaked by the Karl-James cheese, because I've been preoccupied lately. How many grass-fed cows can they possibly have in Ireland? Because I noticed that Kerrygold butter is very popular in America. How many bloody cows have they got? How much butter can they make? Sorry.
Okay, can you just leave that for another day? That's just too much.
A lot.
I think we're getting counterfeit butter. What's going on? Sorry.
Yeah, but technically, can they call it Kerrygold cheese in Ireland when it's made in America? Or so? I don't know. It's weird stuff. Yeah.
They're licensed.
And by the way, actually. By the way, I discovered what happened to Sugar. Hang on a minute. I got to get it. Right, right. I have got a theory. Right, I've got a theory. Right. This is sugar butter.
Oh,
Right now, the
lovely.
question is, there's a conspiracy theory about the sugar butter. Right,
No. Go
because
on.
basically it's made with horses milk there, and therefore crack on. Right, Margaret, any
That
news?
might be why it's so nice.
Yeah.
Well,
Margaret, by the way, on behalf of all of us, right, Happy New Year. And Margaret, you're looking pretty dishy. I would take you out on a date on a Wednesday,
well, I've just looked on my
except I'm busy
I
teaching.
just looked on my trusty phone at the Smithsonian magazine. I thought I'll just see what they've got, what's going on. And it says, why were all of these bodies buried sitting upright and facing west more than 2,000 years ago? And this is in
I
Dijon.
don't know.
Well, they don't know either. But there were 13 of them, 13 of them in France, in Dijon, buried there, sitting up and facing west. And they just did.
Can I
Yeah, go on.
can I interject? What did you get the spelling right? Because if that was in Wales, it'd be Dijon.
No. It's in your French France.
I thought that was funny, actually. Sorry.
And it's an unusual burial site in Dijon, unless you've got a Dijon. Have you got a Dijon in Wales? Have you? You could well have. I don't
No,
know.
they've got a Dijon.
No, this is definitely
No, it's
French.
Dijon.
Yeah, and there are 13 bodies of adults all sitting up and facing west. Very unusual.
Right. Oh, right. So you're not going to ask me that thing about my glasses, all right?
Yeah, go on, tell
Judith.
us. I know you're dying to say. Go on.
Right, there was this person I hadn't seen for a while, right? And he was like a bit of a trans dresser, and I said I was wearing the same glasses as him, and I said us people need to stick together, so I had to give him a big kiss.
Why did you have to?
Well, he just looked really really good, so I gave him a big
impelled.
sloppy kiss.
Well, that's
I felt
very
impelled.
nice.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Better than a kick up
What's
the
wrong with
pants,
that?
isn't it?
Yes, quite.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Yeah, see, Andy's for it. We got to go around kissing trans dresses. But okay.
And if you were French, Carl, you would have kissed him on both cheeks.
Yes, you would.
So hang on. So what I should have done is ask him to get out the car and get him to stand in front of me, kiss him on both cheeks. Right? Okay, I'll do that next time.
Okay.
I say Will told me to do it.
Go for three. Might have some Polish roots.
Look, I tell you, I started to worry about myself now. Right, Judith, Return of the Fraggle.
Where is she?
No news, thank you. No, nothing, no news.
Right,
I've not read or seen or anything, sorry.
But I got to rename Kate because nobody can pronounce that, so we'll just call her Kate. Right, good, excellent. Right, Will, quickly. Oh, by the way, Will sent me some images of mound building in America, right? So I know we've already done a lecture in that in the past. It was also one of the sort of little lectures that we did over Christmas. So I sent an email out to everybody about the stuff that Will sent me. Job done. Will, anything you want to tell me before I crack on?
No, I'm ready to listen.
Hang on a minute, you've got nothing to say? Flipping it, that's a miracle. Right, okay. I'm full of it tonight, honestly. Right, okay. I just thought that we need to get onto the Roman Britain stuff now, today. End of no more prevaricating. We've done loads of practice stuff, right? And basically I wanted to sort of get into the taste of Roman era Britain without really much talking about sort of the historical references, right? So the big title today, the archaeological evidence for Julius Caesar's invasions of Britain yay or nay. And what I'm not going to do is do the usual Julius Caesar stuff, right? In on the northern beaches of France, he was looking out over to Britain, and he wondered and he pondered, and they all jumped into their boats. It was too stormy. They came back. That was 56 BC, right? And then in 54 BC, it was a bit of a success, right? I got buzzed then. Somebody got buzzed. And then 54 BC, they did a little bit more. Job done. Jobs are done. Bob's an uncle or whatever. So we're not going to do any of that. We're going to do a slightly different way, right? So hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So we've got a few images to look at. So the key question is, the big key question is twofold. One, when we look at Boudica, for example, and we look at the period of Boudica, 61 AD, and I'm saying, right, if none of the historical evidence existed, can we actually find that there's a Boudican rebellion? Yes, there's loads of it, right? So now we can get to that point. But along the way, we've got a lot of other things to get to before we can actually get back to Boudica and the archaeological evidence. Yeah, and some of you will be aware that I'm doing my daily YouTube video. Well, it's supposed to be daily. I'm revisiting all the Roman stone remains of Britain. Again, I'm reposting them up on my YouTube channel. So I remember I got to about 115, right? And Judith was pretty happy to watch my little 1-minute videos because she loved the music. And then as I'm going through it, I'm actually finding other bits of stone remains in Roman Britain. For example, there's a random stone in Manchester, right, which is a big part of the Manchester Roman wall, and I didn't put that in the first one, basically because the stone is the most boring bit of archaeology ever discovered in Britain. But I'm going to do a whole minute of that, but that'll probably be a few months away, right? But the whole point is that can we compare the Boudican stuff with Julius Caesar? The answer is no. On the thing of the problematic thing is that we've got basically little archaeological evidence in connection with Julius Caesar, but right, there's change going on. So what caused that change? And this is what we could very much start to think about. So cause and effect. So something happened to sort of stir up the people of Britain, right, roughly around 55 BC. And what was that? It must have been Julius Caesar. So we're thinking about that. What we've got about from Julius Caesar is the stuff that's actually written down by Julius Caesar, right? Julius Caesar could written anything, right, and people would believe it, right? And there's no invasion of Julius Caesar invading Iceland. He in no way invaded Iceland. But the point I'm trying to make is that can archaeology confirm Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain, or are we relying mainly on his own propaganda? So what we need to do, we need to balance three things, right? Three things I need to balance before we go any further, right? And hopefully it's just me on the screen at this minute. I don't know, but you can help me out with that one. But the one thing that we need to say is, here we've got Julius Caesar, right? And the first person to tell us that there was an invasion of Roman Britain was Julius Caesar, right? 56, 55, 54 BC. So was there an invasion before Julius Caesar by somebody else, which there's no evidence to say that there was? And then we've got Julius Caesar, and then we've got this other guy called Caligula, right? So Caligula is assassinated and gone as a Roman emperor in AD 41. So we're talking about not 100 years after Julius Caesar, but Caligula is said to have tried to invade Britain, right? But he didn't. But then again, anything that Caligula wrote hasn't survived. Right, so we're saying, Caligula could never have invaded Britain, right? Because he was a nut job. But when you look at Caligula, right, we've actually got archaeological evidence of a large Roman fort that Caligula built on the French coast. Why did he build this large Roman fort? We're told that he built this large Roman fort because he was using it as a base point in AD 39 to invade Britain. So we've actually got more archaeological evidence for Caligula possibly invading Britain than we've got for Julius Caesar, right? So, and then we go on to the likes of Claudius in AD 43, and we think, well, that's really good. We got loads of evidence for Claudius invading Britain. No, we actually we've got very little evidence for Claudius coming over to Britain at all. We suddenly happens that the Roman military in Roman Britain is in Britain 43, 44 AD, but there's very little evidence to talk about the actual physical invasion. And suddenly the Romans occur in Britain, right? We know suddenly there's something that means that the Romans occur in Britain, and we talk about Claudius. So all this stuff we've really got to get into, the nitty gritty of all this interesting stuff, but it's going to take some time, right? So this is where we need to start the adventure. So the adventure is with Julius Caesar, and way we're going to do it. We're going to pick up stuff over the next few weeks. But what we are going to do, right? This is gonna blow Margaret's mind. Margaret said to me, she was watching a lecture not so long ago, and there were so many different topics that fried her mind. Right, we'll do a couple more of them, Margaret, just to upset you. Right, but tonight is more of one of those that we go in and out of the same thing tonight, because it is the new year and archaeologists haven't been working anywhere. Everything's been shut down, so there's very little in the news. Full stop. Right, so let's look at an image. Let's look at a little bit of an image and let's go into it. So I've got to find my images. Let's share. Sharing is caring, as we know. Margaret, you didn't send me a box of chocolates for Christmas, but I'll forgive you. Right. Okay. So we haven't got a lot of images. We've got these images here. You can get an idea. We got these floating images here, right? And we've got these here. Oh, and by the way, Michelle dug that off her phone a while ago. That's me in Shetland. There you go. But by the way, and the interesting thing is in Shetland, right? Is that all that's old man's beard, right? And notice the milk in the pocket, because we had a flask and we had coffee. The reason why I'm chucking this in here is because I thought I'd chuck this in here because yes, and the one thing that's really interesting, right, is the background on this image from Shetland, right? And the reason why the background is really interesting is because it's desolate. So there's a point to that. So when you're looking at Julius Caesar and his invasion of Britain, right, it didn't look like this, but people think that the Julius Caesar's invading Britain where there's no trees, right, and there's all these tribal people wandering around with their spears, right? Yeah, there was trees, there was agriculture, and people were fairly happy being in Iron Age Britain. So let's go on to away from that. There's Julius Caesar himself. So and Julius Caesar just barked, by the way. It's very interesting. Kate, I hope you're charging a dog for coming along to my lectures each week, right? So Britain before Rome. We've talked a lot about Britain before Rome. To get an idea of Britain before Rome, we've talked about Europe before Rome. We've talked about Asia before Roman invasion of Britain. We talked about Africa, and we've talked about all these different areas. We've really gone into it. So to try and get the mindset, why is Julius Caesar interested in Britain, right? Why is he the only one to write about the invasion of Britain, right? This is all relevant. These are all relevant questions, relevant statements. So Britain in the late Iron Age was this tribal society, lots of things going on. We've talked about coins, we've talked about hill forts, we've talked about oppidums, which are early Iron Age towns and cities in Britain. We're talking about trade, we're talking about Julius Caesar's face, his sort of decor. This guy is not the first Roman that these people in Britain have seen, because they've got coins, they've got all this stuff going on, right? So when we used to go to school, it's like suddenly the Romans turn up on the beaches of Britain in 55 BC, and Julius Caesar's got a deal with it, and basically the Quiffler is just jumping out the boat and he's saying, "Follow me, boys, let's attack these Iron Age people." But then again, Julius Caesar's writing all that stuff. We don't know how much of that actually happened, right? And that's the really interesting thing. I found as I say, we looked at some of my history books the other day, and one of the most interesting things I can remember writing about was actually Julius Caesar's invasions of Britain. I loved it; it was great, but lots of it was actually a fantasy story because Julius Caesar's writing the story of the Romans invading Britain, and the thing is anyone in Britain writing the story of Julius Caesar invading Britain, right? From the British point of view, no, right? And then you start to think, hang on a minute, but if there were Roman people in Britain before Julius Caesar, why isn't anyone else writing about this? The answer is maybe it wasn't such a big deal. Maybe it was just a few Romans in a boat coming over for a jolly, right? And then they went home, and then Julius Caesar's writing about 10 leaders of Britain, even the leader of Orkney, the Orcadian king, coming all the way down to visit Julius Caesar, right? And he's basically on the breaches of Dover saying, use the gold, don't take over the rest of Britain, right? And you're thinking, why would the king of Orkney come all the way that distance within a few weeks? It doesn't make any sense, right? So we've got to think about all this stuff with a bit of tongue in cheek, right? And I'm going to say something that might ring home to you, right? Margaret, can you come on here in a minute, right? I want to use a metaphor, right? And I'm just going to chuck it out. Did we ever actually land on the moon, in your opinion?
Yes.
Somebody said no. Right. Okay. We landed on the moon. Right. Okay. That's really, really good. Right. Okay. We've started. Right. We landed on the moon in 1969. Right. But we haven't been back to the moon for over 50 years. Right. And people wonder, if we had gone to the moon, right, why hadn't we been back since? Right. I'm not going to argue whether we landed on the moon or not, but we haven't been back since. Right. Now, Margaret, whoever said no, then we're just going to disagree with you, right? For the sake of argument, Margaret, we did land on the moon, right?
Yeah.
We came, we saw, we conquered, and we went back. That's exactly what Julius Caesar did. Right. The Julius Caesar thing is that Julius Caesar came over to Britain. It is like moon landings because in many ways, we've got Julius Caesar on the beaches, so we're told by Julius Caesar, right? And he's here in 54 BC, and then suddenly, right, between 54 BC, right, and AD 43, there's no military Roman presence in Britain, right? There's no Roman military garrison. Why isn't this happening, right? So these are the things that historians have been asking for such a long time. We asked that about the moon, right? But the fact of the matter is, we can probably categorically say we did actually land on the moon. There were several moon landings and all the rest of it, and that's it, right? But why haven't we been back since? And we've got to ask the same questions about Julius Caesar. Why didn't Julius Caesar and the Romans come back to Britain? Was it too expensive? Is that
too expensive?
Is that the reason why Julius Caesar didn't?
In both cases.
I know you're talking about from the moon.
Yeah.
In both cases, that's a good excuse. We'll use that one. We'll chuck that there. Thank you very much. Right. But then again, the question is, there's no written records. There's nothing in a British context to say that the Romans ever came over. There's no. Okay, if there's no written records, why didn't the Britons actually carve something? Why didn't they do? We don't have any of that, and that's really, really interesting. Right.
They might have carved
so obviously we've got.
Maybe they did carve something that we've never found.
Or we could say, and whoever's phone is bleeping, can you try and just stop sort of the text, please? It's getting annoying. The one thing I could say is that the way you're asking the right questions, Margaret. The way the people recorded Julius Caesar came over to Britain, they may have recorded it in a different way. Right, they may have put a standing stone up somewhere. They may have recorded it in a way that we don't really understand. Right, but archaeology versus history. So we've got these carvings, and back on the continent. right? And maybe this might indicate a few sheep and stuff that the Romans managed to get from Britain. This is the tribute side of things, right? But we're looking at something like this, a boat like this, a trireme type boat like this, and one thing that we could actually say, right, is that again, we don't have any shipwrecks of these boats. What we're told from the side of Julius Caesar is that lots of boats were shipwrecked on the British coastline. We've not found the boats either. So again, we're really struggling to get to the Julius Caesar archaeological evidence. And some of you might say, well, why are we even doing this? Why didn't we just go straight to Caligula, right? We can't go straight to Caligula because we've got to ask these questions. We've got to ask these questions. Why is it suddenly that people in Britain are really starting to think, right, we're going to produce loads of coins, right? We're going to actually start to build and bury people in the Roman way, right? Why is Prasutagus, before his death, allied to the Romans? Yeah, why have we got like the location of the Fishbourne Roman parish at Chichester built by a local person in a Roman style, so that something has happened for people to really start to look to Rome. So in other words, Julius Caesar may have actually sort of made Rome fashionable in Britain by coming over here, right? And that's something that we need to think about. In absence of evidence, there's other things happening, right? There's lots of things happening, but the one thing that archaeologists always used to talk about is that obviously Julius Caesar attacked the hill forts. You know, but we don't have any evidence of that either. So we've now got to rewrite history, right? There's talks of the odd helmet being found, right, that could be Roman or might not be Roman, found in one or two locations in southern England, right? But that's not evidence in itself of a Roman military campaign in Britain or a Roman military conquest. One of the things that we need to say quite bluntly is that this is not the usual type of invasion, right? This is not a D-Day Normandy invasion. It's really not, folks. This is a few thousand Roman soldiers, right? They came, they saw, they conquered, and they went away. This is what we're sort of coming to. So what we're sort of thinking about is that the area of the map that we're interested in, right? The area of the map that we're interested in is this area that says Cantiaci. And where you got the C and the I, right? That's probably the area that Julius Caesar managed to conquer. But Julius Caesar is said to have conquered the whole of Britain. And he's said to have conquered all of Britain because the kings and leaders of Britain came to him and said, don't conquer the rest. Here's a load of gold and stuff, and then go away. And that's what Julius Caesar did in 54 BC. And obviously we'll look a little bit more of the detail of these fundamental invasions from a historical point of view in a few as we go through the weeks. And you can say, hang on a minute, Carl, you said that let's not base this on what Julius Caesar says. There might be something in relevance to what Julius Caesar says, right? But when we actually start doing that type of stuff, maybe we should think about it with a pinch of salt. So why Caesar matters? Why Julius Caesar matters? We wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't for Julius Caesar. That's it. There's if Julius Caesar's documents were all burnt completely, none of them survived, we would not be talking about this now, right? We'd have gone straight to Caligula. So the question is, the leading question is that did somebody invade Britain before Julius Caesar? Right, based on what I'm saying. So obviously there's stuff going on in Britain before Julius Caesar, before 56, before 45 BC. People are starting to make those Roman type coins. They're starting to bury people in a Roman type way, you know. So there might be somebody else coming over with a military fleet. He came, he saw, he conquered, and what he wrote was destroyed. and then Julius Caesar becomes the one who actually makes the first proper invasion of Britain. So in this Julius Caesar, this powerful figure, he's a politician, he's a general, he's a propagandist. Okay, if you think about propagandist, is how much of what we're talking about is actually propaganda. Remember, Julius Caesar eventually becomes this great dictator, and he's assassinated in 50. He's assassinated in 44 BC because he's become a dictator, right? So, and that's only 10 years after this big invasion, right? And what if anyone wants to look this stuff up, because we will be looking at little extracts and little bits. If you want to look at the commentari de Bellio Gallicio, this is his accounts of the invasion. But in that, he's talking about his campaigns in Gaul. He's talking about his campaigns in Belgium. He's also talking about other things. Interesting enough, the invasion of Julius Caesar of Britain is actually a footnote in his work. It's not the be all and end all. This is part of his story, right? For us, the invasion by Julius Caesar was massively important, right? But for the rest of Europe, it's not. It's just a little footnote. But for Julius Caesar, it brings him into the world of history. It brings Britain into the Roman realm. Yeah, and many of these tribal names on here are made up by the Romans, like the Silures, like maybe the Demetae, the names like Gemnoni in Cornwall, so usually with a U rather than an A. Lots of these other tribes attested by their own people. We know that the Iceni produce their own coins with Iceni or ECE on it. On the Catavolana, we see that attested on their own coins, CATU. Trino, that's on coins, Atrobates, and so on. We know of these people's names, but some of the other tribal names are obviously attested via the Romans, right? And then whilst there's a point in my head that I need to bring over to you, right? The reason Judith knows this, because she's one of my big fans on YouTube, and that's how she originally came across me. And I said, Judith, come along to my classes, and that's why she's here now. But Judith will know that when I'm doing my daily videos about the Roman stone remains in Britain, right? She will know that there's certain areas of Britain where there are no Roman stone remains at all, right? And they're in surprising places, right? So there are whole areas of Roman Britain where there's not much Roman stuff at all, right? And you get rather confused by that, right? Cornwall's a good example of that, right? There are parts of the Isle of Wight, there's lots of stuff going on in the Isle of Wight, but there's not a massive amount really. You've got a few big Roman villas at Newport in the Isle of Wight. You've got Brading, a couple of other places. You'd think there's a lot more on the Isle of Wight. And the Isle of Man, there's no Roman stuff going on in the Isle of Man. And as for Ireland, that's another story altogether. So there's gaps in what we're looking about with the Roman archaeological evidence in Britain. And also, there are whole bits of Britain that didn't exist in the Roman period that exist today. For example, around the Wash, it was all marshy, boggy stuff, and there's bits of Kent which didn't exist in the Roman period because it was all marshy. There's areas of Somerset that didn't exist in the Roman because it was all marsh, and so it's you've got to be very careful when you look at Roman archaeology in Britain. Very, very careful, and this is what makes it really, really interesting to study, right? Because there's blank areas. So let's go on to let's just look at this, and if anyone knows where this is, right? I've no idea. Yes, I do. This is in Kent. This is Pegwell Bay. So we'll look at Pegwell Bay in a few moments, and you're thinking, well, the Romans landed at Pegwell Bay, but which part of Pegwell Bay did they land at? So the historical source problem is something that we will, again, I keep talking about this. The Del Bellio Gallicio, the Del Bellico Gallicio, or however you want to call it, books 4 and 5 look at the Roman invasion of Britain, right? So books 1, 2, and 3 didn't, right? And it's just thinking, well, it was 2 books, so this was only part of his story. And if you sat Julius Caesar in a room and said, what's the biggest highlight of your life? He's not going to be talking about the Roman invasion of Britain. The one thing that probably made Julius Caesar with his invasions in Spain was his defeat of Vercingetorix, was him becoming dictator. So he would use this. For us, it's so important, but for Julius Caesar, it's not. So again, I just keep talking about 56, 55, 54. 56 didn't work, 55 did, 54 did, and so on. And obviously, anyone invading Britain, right? There are times of the year that you should invade Britain, and there's times of the year that you don't, right? And you know what I'm talking about in the present day news. But the expeditions to invade Britain were coming at the end of campaigning season, right? So this is something that you need to be aware of. Throughout Europe, there are times that people go to war, and there's times that people don't go to war. The end of fighting seasons probably mid-September. Then you don't invade anywhere, right? So we're looking at Julius Caesar coming over to Britain. Some people say actually in September. So he's coming at the end of the campaign, and he basically tags on the invasion of Britain into the other stuff that he's doing. It's again, it's a footnote, right? If you can remember from back at school, Judith, right? One of the things that we're told that the Britons had chariots. They ran around in these chariots, and they were up and down the coastline. And you're thinking, well, Julius Caesar really didn't see chariots in Europe because people stopped using chariots in Europe about 300 years BC, right? But they're still using chariots in Britain. But then again, that's because Julius Caesar tells us that they're using chariots. However, if you look at the archaeological evidence from places like Wet Wang Slack up in Yorkshire, and you think about evidence of a chariot burial in West Wales recently, and other evidence of chariot burials in Britain, right? Chariots were still being used in the Iron Age, but is a chariot going to be any good wandering up and down this Pegwell Bay to sort of torment the Romans? No, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to happen, right? Now there's two things that come into this, that when we're looking at the Bello Gallicio, Julius Caesar is talking about fierce resistance. There's fierce resistance. He overcomes the fierce resistance, and then there's a submission of all these tribes, right? And you start to think, well, why did all the peoples of Britain submit to Julius Caesar when he didn't get out of Kent, right? What's going on here, right? And what might be going on here, right, is that some people in Britain have already thought, right, we like the Romans, right? So we're just not going to do anything, right? We like the Romans, right? And we're gonna basically say, oh, all right, Julius. We met your other bloke who came over a few years ago, right? So we like the Romans, and they're giving tribute to the Romans. So was there actually fierce fighting? Julius Caesar wants us to believe that there's this massive campaign of butchery, right? Because these are butch Romans. So there's this submission of tribes. So the archaeological issues, and then we're going to go on to where did Julius Caesar land? And this is one of the things. And we don't look at much archaeological evidence because the coastline of Dover, the coastline of Pegwell Bay, and the coastline of Kent has changed massively since the Roman period, right? So we're going to chuck in the Battle of Hastings on the 14th of October 1066. There's still some debate over where the Battle of Hastings was, right? One of the biggest events in British history, right? Over 1,000 years before that, if we don't have an idea where the Battle of Hastings was truly, right, how are we going to have any idea where the landing spots of Julius Caesar were, right? And we've got to think about that. So the archaeological issue, Caesar is writing for Rome. He's writing to say that Rome is the best thing in history, right? It's the thing that everybody loves, right? But what is happening, and by what we're told is that Julius Caesar has a tribute, and he basically he goes through Rome and basically, wow, look at Julius Caesar, hail Julius Caesar, he's the most amazing person. He's conquered the whole of Britain. Nobody knew how big Britain was. They may have in Rome. Remember, Rome is over 1,000 miles away from the British coastline, right? Well, actually, a bit more than 1,000, but is nobody in Rome has any idea how big Britain is, right? As far as people in Rome, they might think it's a little island the size of the Isle of Wight, right? So it's just to justify the political ambition of just this one guy. Remember, we're talking about one single figure in history, right? So when we talk about Alexander the Great, we just don't talk about Alexander the Great. We talk about his Macedonians, right? We talk about his great general Ptolemy, right? We talk about we talk about Alexander the Great in a completely different way. We got archaeological evidence for Alexander the Great and his campaigns from 330 BC all the way to Alexander the Great's death, right? Which is less than 10 years later. But what we've got to think about is that where is the British narrative? And the British narrative is subtly there, right? So, okay, I think maybe what Margaret should be asking. Margaret, ask me the question. Do you believe, Karl, that the Julius Caesar's invasion actually occurred?
I think it did. Do you think
Ask me.
it did? You're not sure, are you?
From an archaeological point of view, right? I'm not sure, but from what we're seeing after, a pinprick creates something to happen, right? What happens is that lots of people in Britain actually start to become pro-Roman. How can they become pro-Roman if they don't really know what Rome is, right?
Well, they took
So
slaves. I believe they took slaves back with them.
yes,
Relatives
yes,
of
but
people, of tribal people in Britain were taken over to Rome and
and use
became
them as hostages.
Romanized. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And then it's those people that they're sending back. So what we do there, you've just actually hit upon it, Margaret, right? What we do there. So if there was no writing from Julius Caesar, why are there these hostages in Rome, right? Why are these hostages in Rome? How did they get there, right? And that is the point. And how did these hostages then go back over to Britain, to their communities, and say Rome is a wonderful place? So even if we don't have the physical archaeological evidence, Margaret is completely correct. What we do have, a butterfly's wings have fluttered, and then suddenly things are happening in Britain to make British people very much aware of the Roman world. And Margaret is completely correct on that. So even though we've got no British written counter narrative, there's in absence of evidence, there's things happening to say that Julius Caesar's claims to invade Britain did actually occur. So that means that I'm gone beyond doubt, Margaret. I've got to present and say, actually, there's enough to say that the invasions of Julius Caesar actually did occur. So archaeology must test Caesar's claims, not assume them. And this is the point, Margaret. We're making a lot of assumptions based on what Julius Caesar's telling us, right? But Margaret's example of the hostages is a very sound example that there is something actually occurring, right? So this this is actually an 11-point thing that I'm doing today. We've actually got to point 3, so we're I think we're going okay, right? I think we are, right? But we'll see where we go. So where did Julius Caesar land? The archaeological debate. So proposed landing sites. This is Pegwell Bay. Now, Pegwell Bay is possibly the place that might indicate where Julius Caesar's triremes landed, right? Where he had vessels, barges that would set themselves in this sheltered bay, right? with the cavalry that he required, right? This is where he might be able to put the stores down in Pegwell Bay. However, Pegwell Bay didn't look in the Roman period, in this period of 56, 55, 54 BC, right? This has changed a lot, right? It may have been more suitable for the Roman army to land, right? But it's not what we're looking at that Julius Caesar would have seen. So a nice little base. So where is this in relationship to the actual basically Sandwich and Pegwell Bay, right? There it is in Cliff's End, that little area. And you're thinking, right, okay, that's really nice. So if we go on to the bigger map, right? So if we go on to the bigger map, where's my bigger map? Oh God, where's my bigger map? Oh God, it's back here. I'm sure I had a bigger map. Hang on a minute. I'm going through all my images now to find a bigger map. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. There is a bigger map around here somewhere. I'm sure there is. Right. Okay. So if we go there. So there we go. If we go all the way up, right, we go to the tip there. And we go to the tip. And that's where we're talking about. Pegwell Bay. So there it is on the tip. So if we go back to our little map, Pegwell Bay. Right. So you're thinking, and it's got there. It's also talking about traditional site of the landing of the Saxons in AD 449 and the landing of St. Augustine in AD 597. So we're thinking actually this is a good spot for people to land, right? This is a good spot for historically people to come into Britain, right? And this is what we're talking about from the sense of Julius Caesar. This the spot. So again, south of Ramsgate, in that area, Sandwich and Pegwell Bay, that's where we feel. So again, this might be this ideal spot in history, but there's no actual archaeological evidence on the ground to say that this was the exact locality. However, archaeological indicators, so we're thinking about this, it's a massive sheltered bay. No matter what you're saying, right, no matter what I'm saying, this has changed, right? But graphical landscape, okay, this has changed, but it hasn't changed that much that this would have still been a massive sheltered bay in antiquity, right? So what we've got, and we need to look at this in detail, right? What we've got is that there are little tiny bits of evidence. Now, we don't know when these little tiny bits of evidence date from, and again, we'll do this another week, but the little bits of evidence are late Iron Age weaponry, little bits of broken sword, the odd spearhead, little bits in this area, right? And we've also got the odd bits of Roman military equipment. Now, are those bits of Roman military equipment from this time period, or are they from a bit later? But there are little tantalizing clues, albeit sort of supplementary, right? But there are little tantalizing clues of Roman military equipment and late Iron Age weaponry within this landscape. The question is why? Big question mark. Why? Right? And there's something else that I've sort of hoodwinked you into believing, right? We do know in Britain that we've seen a massive amount of coastal erosion. So it's likely that this bay may have been a third bigger than it is today. So it was a lot more sheltered in the Roman period. Even though it's changed massively today, it was a lot more sheltered. So if you go back to, if you look at this area, right, and you're thinking about maybe you can extend the coast south of Ramsgate a little bit, and you can expand the coast a little bit into the blue area on the right, in regards to Sandwich Bay, all the way up to sort of where you've got Cliff's End. And you're thinking about sort of a little bit more protection, right? This would seemingly be the most ideal space for a Roman military fleet to land its vessels. And we're talking about Not a couple of dozen. We're talking about over 100 odd vessels needing to be sheltered in this bay, right, and to be protected from the excessive swells and waves that you see associated with the erosion currents on this coast. So there are two other localities. There's two other localities that we need to look at as well. So we looked at Pegwell Bay, and it's very muddy. You can sort of, on the high tide, you can bring vessels here, and then you can land them, and you can basically moor them. This would be appropriate. But when we look at the descriptions associated with Julius Caesar, he said that storms damaged some of his vessels and they've got to be repaired, but that's for another week. So there's two other localities, right, that is thought to have been maybe other landing spots for Julius Caesar. But now we get a problem. The problem is that Julius Caesar had two successful, well, in his own words, two successful invasions of Britain, right? Within this landscape. So which was the invasion from 54 and which was the invasion of 55? And those are the questions, right? So we're never going to be able to answer those questions. Even they may have just landed in the same space from day one, right? However, we think of the topography of this landscape. This is topography of Kent. And you're thinking, one thing that people don't really show you is a map like this, right? And we're thinking, right, okay, so we've got Ramsgate on the far right hand side, we've got Pegwell Bay, and we're looking at this topographical landscape. So this area here is very alluvial, it's very flat, and this would seemingly be the best place to land. But how alluvial and flat and prone to flooding was this to the Romans in the day, in July, August, September, in those years 55 and 54 BC. So you're looking at this and thinking, well, the Roman army's got to march across this landscape. It's not exactly easy looking, is it? They've got to go up and down. There's sort of all river valleys. There's a very difficult topographical landscape that the Romans have got to navigate, and this is really, really sort of interesting. So when we look at Julius Caesar and we look at the events of these invasions, right? So we need to then look at this other locality, right? And anyone who's actually been here, this is Deal. And just thinking, well, this could be the spot, right? Hang on a minute. Where's hang on a minute. But this where the exact locality is Deal. But the one thing that we can think about Deal, right? And the warmer coastline, and what we need to do, right? For some reason my images haven't come through on this. So if we type in gear, and we think about Deal, and we look there, and then we've got another image I want to show you. So here we go. That's what Deal looks like today. And there we go. Let's get this up on the screen. Come on, will you do this to me? Stay in browser. Okay, let's just get a map. I did that. I did have this. I'll go back to web. Hopefully we'll get it right. There we go. Deal. So there it is. So what we're talking about further on down the coast, right? Deal, right? And you're thinking, okay, that's a little bit further on down the coast, right? And you're thinking, well, why didn't the Romans actually land at Folkestone? Surely that would be closer to the French coast, But and this is the thing, you see. People are maybe saying Deal because it's got flat beaches and you can put landing craft on there. It'd be actually ideal. And then you think, this used to be thought, right? You got Dover there, right? So where are we on the British coastline? So we're thinking, hang on a minute, surely Dover would be the best thing. And when I was in school, right, the history teacher used to actually say the Romans landed in Dover, right? And then it's moved up to Deal, and then it's moved over to Pegwell Bay over by Ramsgate, right? So if the Romans are going to land, surely Dover's going to be better. But It's not. But and this is what we used to when we were in school, right? We used to have. Let's type in the White Cliffs of Dover. The White Cliffs of Dover. Oh, and White Cliffs. Oh, there we go. Straight away. Nope. Don't allow there. And this is what we used to see in school, right? When this comes up, is it going to come up? Right. Okay. Here we go. Not happening. Dover. The white, and there's a point to this. The White Cliffs of. Don't worry, it'll come up there. Image. Accept. Right there we. Saved by Wikipedia. Now this, when I was in school, right, this is the image that this history used to show us for one of Julius Caesar's invasions, right? It was closer to the French coastline, right? But you can't, you land the boats here, you can't get off the beach, right? And when we used to look at images of this coastline, right? This is really less likely. We used to see sort of slides of chariots going up and down the bit of the Dover coastline, and then there was another thing back in the sort of 1990s that the Julius Caesar's ships were going to land here, and then they saw all these chariots going up and down the cliffs, right, on the top of the cliffs. And then it said that Julius Caesar got put off by this, so he sort of went further up the coastline, right, to deal. And then there were these people waiting on the beach. So then the story is they went to Pegwell Bay, right, and that's why they landed there. But so all of these things, all of these suppositions and ideas. So this is the footprint is to try and understand really what's going on. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go back to my images, and we might have a break soon. So going back to my images, so that's deal. So now, these are actually much later coins, but I'm using this as an image. This is the Frome hoard, which had, I think, 50,000 Roman coins found in it, right? This is a much later hoard, right? However, this is what I'm going to use. So what we now start to find, right? What we now start to find in after 55 BC, right? 54 BC, we suddenly start to find thousands and thousands of Roman coins in Britain, right? Why do we suddenly have an explosion of Roman coins found in Britain? Why are they being found? Why is something's changed? Right, this is the point. So from Margaret saying, "Oh, Karl, you're not really sure that there was an invasion," to Margaret talking about slaves and talking about hostages, and then me saying, "Actually, there's lots of evidence to say that there was a big event," right? Something did happen in 55, 54 BC. If we didn't have the writings of Julius Caesar, something did happen. The Romans were here, end of. Something happened. That is what we're saying. Because we're starting to find loads of coins, and not just Roman coins. We're starting to find loads of Gallo-Belgic coins from areas that the Romans were just slowly starting to conquer, right? So there's an explosion of coins in Britain. So up until this point, what we've got tribes like the Trinovantes, we've got the Iceni, we've got the Catalani people, we've got all these people actually producing coins. But suddenly there's all these coins from the continent. Why are there all these coins from the continent? Why have they suddenly started to come over here in bucket loads? And this is really important. This is the key piece of archaeological evidence to say that there's some actually real happening, right? So coins indicate that there's trade, right, with the Roman world. Loads of coins. Again, after 55, 54. Coins indicate that maybe there's mercenaries being employed by the Roman army. This is why they're bringing coins over, right? So suddenly people are now starting to fight with the Romans, for the Romans, in the Roman army. And they're bringing back coins with them, right? The coins tell us of political alliances. there's something big going on here. So by stealth, the Roman coins are already economically Romanized. They're getting ready for something to come. So by the time you get to Caligula in 13 AD 39, and you're talking about Claudius in AD 43, right? What you are seeing is that people are actually already Romanized, right? And they're basically saying, "Come on, boys, we want a bit of Rome. We just start building towns and cities and all the other things that Rome does." So this is what we're seeing. Again, these coins are a lot later, but it's you don't. There's not many coin hoards like this from period, but there's loads of coins nevertheless around. So economically, there is something big going on. And before the break, I would like to introduce this. This is not the Battersea Shield. This is something completely different, right? So just going to get my notes on here. This is known as the Wandsworth Shield. Yes, exactly. Wandsworth is a circular bronze age shield boss with a La-10 style on it, which is this sort of stylistic form of art that we actually see in Britain, right? It's a bronze shield, very important. It's a bronze shield, and this is really interesting, right? Although it dates from probably 100 years before this sort of invasion of Britain by the Romans, this is the type of style, this is the type of thing that the Romans are going to actually see within the British landscape. And this circular bronze shield mount is being found in Wandsworth in 1849. And this itself is something that would be familiar to the Romans coming over to Britain. They would see this style, right? And although we don't get many of these types of things being found in Britain, right, it gives you an idea what the culture of Britain is like in the Roman context when Julius Caesar is coming over here. I know this is a little bit before, but this is the type of style that the Romans would have seen. So they would have been, the Roman world would have been sort of would have been attached to this sort of sense of Britishness. They would understand that we're just not these backwards people who don't produce anything. We actually do produce really interesting art, and you can actually see 4 studs on it. And this is sort of mounted on the back onto a wooden sort of panel behind. So the Wandsworth shield, and which is very similar. Oh, hang on a minute, to the Battersea shield, which of course the Battersea shield is again in a similar style. This is a lot earlier, but then again, how early? Because this could actually date from precisely the time of this period of Julius Caesar. You see, all these styles of all these types of styles are really difficult to date. This might not be from 150 BC. This might have actually been from around the time of what's going on with Julius Caesar in Britain, but the earliest date is 150 BC. This actually might date from this period, and so all this wonderful art is something that the Romans are actually seeing, right? And they're getting an idea of this art, right? And these forms of projection from a British context are going into the minds and the soul of the Romans, and this is the similar stuff that the Romans would have actually seen in Northern Europe anyway. Just one thing before we have a little bit of a break. This is actually a Roman marine. He doesn't look like the typical Roman soldier, does he? So when we talk about the Romans and their campaigns in regards to Julius Caesar, this marine comes into play, right? But he doesn't look like a typical Roman soldier, because in fact Roman soldiers didn't look like typical Roman soldiers at this stage. They're not imperial Roman soldiers. They don't have that sort of plate armor. they don't have all that chainmail, right? They have a little bit of a metal plate there. They're mainly in sandals with sort of curved shields, big plumes, cockades, and the sort of helmets. Yeah. So this is the type of thing that you actually might see that a Roman soldier, very, very adaptable, very good for campaigning in Britain. But after the break, we'll have a little bit more because I do believe we've got quite a few more images to see. And we've got all these different things to sort of look at. So we'll do these after the break. And what I'm going to do is I will try and find some of the images that are actually missing. So we'll have a bit of a break now and stop the sharing, and we'll see now if anyone would like to say anything. So it's good that Judith says the return of the Fraggle. I like that. Andy.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering with the kind of coins and things, whether we got a history of groups of people coming from the east to the west have been pushed out by other cultures coming from their east. And I wondered if these people from Flanders and things like the Belgiques and things like, whether they were pushed out by the Romans and came over, and that's one of the reasons why we suddenly got a lot of coins as well.
Actually, it's good. It's good to challenge the narrative. So we've got all these coins, these Gallo Belgic coins in Britain, right? And obviously, this actually, Andy, this is something that nobody ever talks about, right? So we're going to do it now. No. The one thing that's really topical that's sort of weaponized at this minute is movements of people from different parts of the world, and the influence that's going to have, detrimental or whatever, right? We can listen to what Donald Trump is saying in the States. We can think about what British politicians are saying, right? But if we take a step back from that and we think, right, Britain, Europe, the world, people have always moved around, right? And when we think about Julius Caesar, we again, it's like, why does Julius Caesar have to be the first Roman to come over to Britain? Equally, why do the Romans need to be the first people to invade Britain? There are countless amounts of, and what is an invasion? There are lots of people being moved across Europe. The Romans are going to be causing stress. People are not going to be staying in Europe to be slaughtered by the Romans. They're not going to. For example, what happened to Vercingetorix at Lysae by 51 BC was that his people are enslaved, right? Vercingetorix is dragged through the streets of Rome, and he's executed. People know all that. So one thing in the history of Europe is that people are static. They don't seem to move over to Britain. They seem to stay. Why would they stay there? So there's this island in the north where they could be safe, right? And they could go there. So when, just briefly, what Andy's saying, you've got the Parisii people of northern England. You've got the Belgi tribe of southern England. You think, where have all these names come from? And you think of, well, small movements of people moving around, because equally you could say about the Anglo-Saxons years and years later, right? So Andy's completely correct. So that there are, this is something that Andy, to be honest with you, there's nothing in the text that I can verify to what you've just said about people being stressed out coming over to Britain. And I think that's a very, very worthwhile intimation into the story, indicating where some of those coins are coming from, right? But we've also got to, and then we've got the problem. We've got the problem of, when we get to Vercingetorix, we're thinking about, there was a group of British mercenaries coming over from Britain, right, to try and help Vercingetorix. So why are actually helping Vercingetorix? Because they're aware that there's stuff going on, and with those British mercenaries, our people had already fled to Britain. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about, what we talk about, history is like this, that there's white and there's black, right? So the mercenaries from Britain are helping Vercingetorix 53, 52, 51 BC, right? But who are these mercenaries? Are these because if you look into history, you look at Operation Swordfish that would have happened in 1944 in southern France, in Marseille, if D-Day landings had failed. And the Operation Swordfish was basically the French army that had been billeted in Britain after they had fled France, at Dunkirk. So when you look at that, you're thinking, hang on a minute, right? Why couldn't that have happened at the time just before Julius Caesar, where there's people who have fled to Britain because of what Julius Caesar and his generals were doing, right? And then they've got a reason, right? I've got to be honest with you, Andy. This is a really good question. Why the hell would the British want to bother helping Vercingetorix if they're quite happy in British in the island of Britain, right? Why are they going to really want to bother, right? Why are they going to bother, Andy? Because let's talk about this. It's a really, really good point. I'm getting some hairs on the back of my neck on this one, because this is something that nobody talks about. Because Julius Caesar's invaded Britain, right? The invasion's over and done with. The moon landings, why the moon landings at Margaret? Why didn't we ever go back, right? So between 54 and AD 43, the Romans are not really got a military presence in Britain. Why, right? Moon landings, why? Right, all these things happened, but there's a gap, right? So there's these Britons thinking, well, Julius Caesar ain't going to bother us. He's not going to come back over. He hasn't been back over in 53 BC. He's not been over in 52 BC. So why would we even bother wanting to help Vercingetorix? Because the Romans are no threat to us. But there must have been a reason why people were coming over to help Vercingetorix. They were probably already Vercingetorix people who had sanctuary in Britain. And that's a really good point, Andy. And I think that's what Andy's saying. And nobody talks about that. No, it doesn't. Nobody talks about that. I've never heard.
We know they traded, so they're bound to have come over. And it's just like 20 miles. Why wouldn't you? You're getting pushed out.
But why send a military force? So that's the point.
Well, I would assume because they've already got those links through trading. So
yeah,
exactly. And the people that have fled from France and because they want to get back at the Romans. We've been armed and we're going to go back over. That's exactly what the French did.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the French were now armed. They had now American tanks in 1944. They're gonna have another punch at the Nazis, right? So if we go back and think about that with Julius Caesar, we're gonna have another punch back at Julius Caesar, right? And history does repeat itself.
Absolutely.
I think that's a massively really important point. Andy, can I just say something at this point, right? We've Michelle and I have decided to sort of do a little bit more with what we're doing in West Wales, right? So if anyone does want to come down and do any archaeological excavation work, then you're very welcome, and we'll be doing a little bit more. And if you want to get your teeth in doing some archaeological work in the summer, then let us know. Right. Okay. Everybody's welcome, including Judith. Right. Anything from you, David?
No.
Okay, and what about you, Drina?
No,
Before we
no
have our break.
questions. No questions.
What about you, Kate? Have you been? Kate's been quiet for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm nursing a headache.
yeah.
I'm barely paying attention. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Oh God! Don't worry, Kate.
Spirit
David's gone again.
Pardon?
How did he do that?
What?
It's gone.
What?
David's just disappeared. Andy, next week, right? We got to remember to say to David, David, if you're off now, we all love you, and yeah, whatever. Right. Oh, by the way, guys, I've got a load of postcards to send everybody. Basically, somebody's going to get that postcard, which is hang on, can you see that? There you go. Somebody's going to get that one, and somebody's going to get that one. So I'm sending all these postcards out. Look at that great one there. Colchester Castle. One of you is going to get that one.
Lovely.
And that one, and a bit of that. Margaret, anything you want to say? Look at that. Somebody gets the Greek soldier. Anyway, anything you want to say, Margaret?
Well, as to evidence, actual archaeological evidence in Kent, oh, I like that. They used to sell a lot of those on the pier at Blackpool. They're collector's items, aren't they?
Yeah, I've been buying them off the internet and sending them out to people. Go on.
I'm just thinking about it wasn't really an invasion of Britain that he did, Caesar. It was just a recce, wasn't it, to see.
Oh, how dare you! The Romans see it as an invasion. It was a proper invasion. He conquered the whole of Britain. How dare
It was a
you!
reconnaissance operation. But I don't know how long they stayed, not long enough to build any fortifications other than they found a defensive wall at in that bay. What is it? Pegwell Bay, Ebbsfleet. They found a defensive ditch at Ebbsfleet. But if they'd left any stuff, wouldn't the locals
It's not been dated yet. Go on.
But wouldn't the locals have just taken anything that was left?
Oh, of course.
You know, they wouldn't just have left stuff there. They would have nicked it, wouldn't they?
Oh, how dare you! That only happens in Barry.
I've only got to look at the Roman fort.
The point is with
the Roman fort in Ambleside. Most of the old houses in Ambleside are built with stone from the Roman fort.
Yeah, well, they're a bit. You know, I put a wallet on the seat in Ambleside and it was nicked. But yeah. So
I'm really sorry.
that was
I've got
after
to
the
go, but
battered
I'll come back
haggis and
after the
chips.
break.
But that's
Okay.
Oh my God! What did I just say?
She's
sorry.
coming back.
The carer's here. I've got to go and help her. I'll come back after the break.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a minute. Go on, Margaret.
Yeah. Oh God, I can't turn the thing off. Oh.
I'll see you in a minute, Fraggle. Hey, Fraggle, just leave it there.
Okay.
Go on, Margaret.
Yeah, I think if anything had been left, it would have been taken and used by the locals. It wouldn't have just been left lying about.
Can I just jump into I was going to say something terrible, but I was going to jump into your pants. No, I didn't mean that. Can I just jump into your pants there because when in a way what you're saying is correct, right? But it's like re-looking. There's a Roman fortress known as Inch-Turtle, which is known north of the Gasgridge frontier, north of the Antonine Wall. We'll do all that again. There's this massive Roman legionary fortress, right? And basically, when the archaeologists were working there in the oh God, I get my dates mixed up with one fort and another. I think it was the 1950s, right? They found 1 ton of iron nails, right? Hidden in the middle of this fort at Inch-Turtle, right? And they say that the Romans deliberately hid these iron nails under like a layer of clay and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, well, maybe the Romans didn't hide them at all. Maybe the local people actually hid them themselves. Well, the point is that the point is that people are going to be curious, right? And we've got to actually think about what Margaret's just said, right? And the point is, anything that is Pegwell Bay a battlefield site, right? Just presume it's a battlefield site, which it might be, it might not be. So most battlefield sites that archaeologists are trying to find, right? There's very little evidence. And when for example, if you go to the Battle of Islam Douala from 1879, January 1879, you find all these burial cromlechs everywhere, right? But systematically, the entire landscape, other than the bodies, everything was removed, right? So even the cartridge cases, everything was removed because it's all valuable stuff. Right. When we look at the Battle of Waterloo, you're talking about people going back to the Battle of Waterloo, finding French skeletons, right, and knocking all the teeth out because they're brilliant for false teeth. And then we're talking about Napoleonic battlefield sites, people taking all the bones in cartloads, bring them over and making making glue out of them, right? So even the bones are being removed in lots of contexts. But then again, we've got the stark contrast with the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, because in AD 9, because what we've got is that we're now finding the bones of the Roman legionaries and the coins and all the rest of it, because it's left there, because the Iron Age people almost, the Germanic people, the Iron Age people of AD 9 didn't want to be contaminated with all the Roman stuff, so they just left it there, right? But Pegwell Bay is a different context altogether, and there's one thing that we're missing in that context. The Romans would have had enough time to de-rig. They would have had enough time to have taken everything away with them if they wanted to. They would have had enough time to burn their stuff, right? I don't know if anyone's burnt stuff, but if you can put it this way. If you wanted to burn all your possessions in an open field, right, other than the bits of iron, you could probably burn a ton load of material and leave nothing behind. So what are we looking for? We're looking at odd fragments, and those odd fragments are those bits of Roman and Iron Age late military stuff that we're talking about that may have been found in Pegwell Bay, that may actually relate to Julius Caesar, 55 and 54 BC. Right, Will, anything you would like to say? Will's turned into a statue. But
okay.
You agree?
Two items. The Life of Julius Caesar, Henry G. Little, 1859, and Julius Caesar by Jacob Abbott, 1877. Both provide accounts of the invasion of Britain. 55 BC indicated from just outside Calais to land at Deal, having reached Dover and then moved up the coast because the natives were already on the mountainside ready to repel the invasion, because they'd already had indications that there was. Okay. The second, that was in the one text available in Hathi Trust. I'll keep saying that. That was in the Julius Caesar by Jacob Abbott in 1877. In 1859, the Life of Julius Caesar gives a more in-depth coverage of the 55 BC invasion, with full details of how far they went and as far as Canterbury, and how far further than that they actually got.
Yeah.
So that's one element. Let's talk about the Iron Age shields. Battersea and Wandsworth. The Wandsworth shield looks as if it's been knocked out of the Battersea shield. The center's been knocked out of an existing shield. So in fact, it's not a separate item. It's a part of an earlier item, not necessarily an individual piece. Now, if you think the shape of the shield, if you go back, and you may be able to validate that in the ancient Britons, you had round shields or oblong shields or square shields made of wood rather than metal. Metal certainly came later, but we're talking about 150 BC.
But
150 BC.
These could primarily be ceremonial shields.
Yeah, well, possibly.
We're not really sure that they were actually used in combat. Yeah.
But if you go back to the style of the Roman shield, 500 BC, the old oblong shield with the bits cut out to poke their spears through, etc.
50 BC. 50 BC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you can say somewhere, and we talked about the fact that there had been trade in South Wales and trade in England, certainly 200-300 years BC, because there were ships that came from the continent, from Gaul, across to ancient Britain. And you could have had this transition of the Solia.
Yeah, we've actually said most of this, but the one thing is that we're looking at is that the limited evidence from the Wandsworth shield and the Battersea shield is actually limited, and And at this period, there is a lot of limited bits of information, but everything that we are saying is that there are trade links, there are things going on between the continent and Britain leading up to 55 BC. But what's happening after 55 BC? There's an explosion of links. There's an explosion of interest in the Roman world, and you could actually say that this explosion, and you're well placed in Canada, the explosion of interest in the Roman world could be said to be similar to the explosion of interest that happened when the Americans came over to Britain from 1942, 1943, and then we're looking at then suddenly people are interested in American culture, right? Up until that point, we had our own culture. You know, nobody was really interested in sort of Coca-Cola and nylons and stuff. But suddenly, the Americans come over with these wonderful things that people are interested, right? And in a way, that's what we're talking about with the Romans in Britain after 55, 54 BC. There's suddenly a massive interest, and this massive interest is caused by an event that is occurring at this stage. And before we actually go on to have a break, when we compare with again Boudica, there are parallels, because when we look at Boudica, if there's no written evidence about Boudica from Tacitus and Dio Cassius, if that stuff didn't happen, we've got all the evidence in the ground to say that the Boudican revolt happened, right? But the post the Boudican revolt is that they're starting to think about building walls around cities. They're starting about thinking about changing the way Roman Britain structures itself after this event. So it's cause and effect. And what we're talking about with Julius Caesar, there's more effect rather than the evidence of the cause.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, thanks for that, Will. We're going to take a break now. Go quickly.
I was just going to say,
Quick.
Rome had multiple problems after 55 BC, so they may not have had the reserves or the materials or the men available to deal with Britain and to expand further, whereas they had to deal with their domestic problems for the rest of their empire. And at that point, then they had to regress a little bit before they could launch out again within 50, 60, 70, 80 years.
And also, you're talking about Black to Margaret with the landing on the moon. Right. We're going to take a break now. We are. That goes back to Margaret. See, It does. Landing on the moon. Right. So we're going to have a break now. It's thanks for that, everybody. It's 10:45. My God, we're halfway through. My God. 10:45. We're going to have a 10-minute break. So 10:45. Okay.
If Patrick Moore said they went to the moon, he saw him through his telescope, then I, for one, believe him.
Hang on a minute. Hang on. Stop a minute. You cannot. Hang on. Shut up, Kate. Stop laughing like a hyena, Kate. Right. Hang on a minute, Margaret. Did Patrick Moore say he actually saw them in his telescope?
He saw them. He saw them. Yeah, all the way there through his telescope.
Oh, shut up!
He did.
Shut up! Really?
And he's a very respectable.
Well, I
astronomer.
believe him then.
Yeah, there you go.
I believe him.
Enough said.
I believe him if Kate doesn't. Now, shut up, Kate. Anyway, Kate can't talk anyway because she's not even British. Patrick Moore is. So stick that in your.
I beg your pardon. No. I'm naturalized. That counts.
Hey, you can't. So you're British now. Oh. I'm going to have a break. I've had enough of this.
I beg your pardon. It's been lovely. It's been grand. But I'm going to take my headache upstairs.
Oh, bless you.
Hey,
go and have a lie down.
Hey, Kate, make sure you go over and take a photograph of that train cover for me. See you soon, love.
Yes, I'm on it. What's on the menu tomorrow? What's on the menu?
Mass orgies.
No.
Oh, not again. That's getting boring.
We're doing the same tomorrow night, but We're doing the same tomorrow night, but we won't have Drina's constant interruption, so it'll be a lot better. Anyway, we're gonna have. So, Kate, I'll see you. I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully.
Okay, good night then all.
Good night.
Bye. Good
Bye.
night.
No, night, lovelies. No, night, no, night, no, night, no, night.
Oh, ow, me
Big
knee.
kiss, Kate.
Mwah, mwah.
Mama.
How do I get out of here?
Who is Kate? Is she joining us every Tuesday?
Oh, she's a porn star I used to sleep with, so I decided to ask her to come on. So actually, she's got something dangling over me, so I decided to let her on. No, I want a break now. Stop asking silly questions. Okay, no, Kate's been with us a while. She just turns up on a Wednesday occasionally. Look, I got to take a break. And the grass behind me. By the way, my daughter's first acting role was a blade of grass on stage. Anyway, I got to take a break.
My first acting role was part of a bank door in Wyatt Earp.
Oh, for God's sake! I thought you part of a door.
I was, you know, the swing doors in a bar in America in the Wild West. I was the left side of the door in Wyatt Earp.
Shut up! Shut up! I'm going. I want a break.
Are you guys familiar with Nanaimo bars? A chocolate powdered base, a chocolate topping with a custard infill. Purely Canadian. Nanaimo, BC. Nanaimo bars.
No, not come across those at all.
Good snack.
Looks it.
Yeah.
Is that one of your paintings behind you, Will, or is it a screensaver?
It's actually the cover of my book.
Is
One of my
it?
one of my books.
Which one?
That's the what can I tell you?
I don't know. What's the
Is that
title?
the porn book with me and Caitlin?
No, I couldn't get that published, Carl. You know, we're very reserved in Canada. Couldn't do that. No, this one deals with the short story. It's a short story book about a Welsh boy.
Oh,
Um, Yeah.
So you do fiction as well?
Well, I do fiction. I've both the novels is fiction, and um,
You're a busy man. You do a lot of writing and a lot of painting.
well, I actually created this digitally.
Ah,
The background sky is actually a real sky.
yeah,
I captured that in Wales back a number of years ago,
right.
and I adjusted it digitally. In fact, well, you can't see it, but at a certain part of it, you'll see a couple of three. The wise kings traveling,
Ah,
following the star in the sky,
yeah.
um, and being guided by the philosopher, which is this was after the philosopher's stone,
All right.
basically.
It's Three Kings Day in Spain today.
Oh well, there we are. See,
Yeah,
coincidence. Well,
6th of
it's
January. It's
January the
the Day of
6th,
the
so it's
Kings.
12th night.
Yeah.
But in Spain, they celebrate Christmas at the end of Christmas, not on the December 25th. They do it on well, I think the January 16th is probably right, Three Kings Day.
Yeah. Have you
Uh,
seen the big moon, great big moon we've had this week, and Venus shining very brightly?
yeah, we've been
I
overcast most
thought it
of the
was
time,
just
but the last
oh,
couple of
oh,
nights, I've seen a full moon,
Mm,
and to the where is it to me? Relative to me, it's to my northwest
yeah.
from when I step out on my balcony, except I wouldn't step out on my balcony onto the snow. But anyway, yeah, so full
What's
moon.
the
And occasionally I will catch one of the transient planets as a bright star in the
mm.
northern sky. Um, but we've been more overcast for some time in the last 3, 4 months. So
Oh, we've had lovely clear skies just about all week up until today, really.
yes.
Just beautiful, crisp winter's days with blue skies and starry nights. It's been just my kind of winter so far. Have
can,
you?
I
can I just show you an image that you can I just show you all an image that you'll never believe what time this was taken because it's been so light. I'll just show this now. Right, here we go. You'll be we'll see if you can guess what I was taking. Hang on a minute. I've got to go back. There. Right. Okay. Right. It's coming up. That image was taken right
Oh, yeah.
at 9:02. That was taken at 9:02 p.m. That
Uh,
was taken at 9 o'clock on Saturday.
was it?
And you can tell it was taken 9 o'clock because you can see lights in the background. That was taken at 9 o'clock at night.
Oh,
I this off the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Know if it had a software thing, but that was what
uh,
came out.
oh,
So you're
that's,
talking about light nights.
yeah.
It wasn't as light as that, but I think the software on the camera said right, and that's the image that it
Mm,
took at 9 o'clock at night.
that's lovely.
very good.
Yeah.
It is lovely. It is. It
Yeah.
is. Right. Okay. So we're gonna get cracking on now. We're gonna get cracking on. So I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one now because we've Fraggle's still coming in from the dark, right? Drina's there. How many people did we start off with? We started off with 8, didn't we?
We're just missing David, I think, and Kate.
Ke-
We're just missing the two.
what? But the regulars, we haven't got Anne tonight, and we haven't
No.
got we're also Roger's away. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right. So So I've got to get back into it, man. And we're just gonna crack on there, and we're going to get on with my notes, which were on here, and we got as far as talking about conflict. We just got to the weaponry thing, didn't we? So let's just sort of get into that and sort of see where we can go. So let's get back into the images and
I'm just
share
thinking, there's always been
screen.
mercenaries, hasn't there? There's still mercenaries that will travel to war. There always has been.
But I think the biggest problem is that we've got in the archaeological record is that we don't really know. We it's difficult to say what this invasion was truly like, and you know what exactly happened, because as far as we know, a few boats came over, landed in Pegwell Bay. There was no resistance. The Roman army just wandered into the landscape, trading, meeting people as they went along. There was no resistance. Julius Caesar thought, oh, that's okay. We've managed to conquer the country, managed to get everybody back in the boats, and managed to come over to Britain. All we've got is what Julius Caesar tells us, and we've already said that we don't really have evidence for archaeological battles and so on. And even when we think about a uniform like this, so we've got the pilum, which is that sort of javelin in front, and you've got a weaker bit of metal, which you've got the metal shaft there, and that goes into a shield, and it weighs the shield down, so the enemy has to drop the shield and all that type of stuff. But the point is, when you look at something like this, the boots are leather, the sort of togas, organic material, the feathers in the helmet are going to be quickly degrade. There's not much in the way of metal, right? And most of that's going to be collected up after the battle. So the archaeological conclusion when we think about all this is that the evidence suggests contact. That contact was in regards to maybe conflict, but not on a large scale, not a large scale conflict. And when we talk about conflict, how many people did this involve? Did this involve whole armies? Did this involve small skirmishes? That's a difficult one to answer. So when we think about objects like the Battersea Shield, we might sort of, and the Wandsworth Shield, we might start to think, well, this is ceremonial evidence from this probably would never have been used in close combat, and it's just the story that is very difficult to tell because we don't really have it. So going back to the sort of earthen type landscape, so we're talking about earthworks, camps, and a problem of absence. Now immediately one of the things clearly about the Julius Caesar invasion is that there's no talk of him besieging any structures like this, right? There's no talk of it. So when we look at the his story and of the Belgo-Gallic War, and we're talking about his Vitae, the life of Julius Caesar, nowhere in that does it say about sieging hill forts, right? Now that's really interesting because we talk about open battles, and it's really interesting because when we look at these types of hill forts, there's no archaeological evidence to say that they've been besieged by the Romans. And then when we think later on in regards to the period of Claudius, and we talk about the invasion of AD 43, for example, Vespasian marched all the way down to Maiden Castle and he besieged it. Well, it turns out that there was no siege there at all. And we're thinking, what exactly did happen? And then in the archaeology, what the archaeology tells us, Margaret, is most of these sites were abandoned even before Julius Caesar. So that explains why none of these sites were under any siege, because nobody was at them. So why would you besiege a site where there is nobody? So that really sort of tells us a great deal. And one of the things that is very, very disconcerting for me, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to come out, right? And I'm going to, we're looking at this and really nice, we got the sort of chariot. But one thing I want us to go out, I want us to go on to type in something, right, which is in my notes, but I haven't got an image of, because I just realized that I should have put this in, right? So we go back to that, we'll type at the top, right? And we'll type in this, okay? And this is gonna hit at you. Like, this is Landry Nodwell's. This has suddenly occurred to me now. So this is marching camps, Roman. And hopefully I will get what I want to give you a little bit of information, right? So hopefully this has come up and we've got images. And right, okay, we've got that. Marching camps. What am I looking for? Is it here? There. Should we do that one? There's a few there. Right, okay, right. Let's just go with that one there. Right, okay. Bingo. Right. This is right, okay. This is a site in Scotland. This is known as Chew Green, right? And this is a 19-acre marching camp, right? And we've got thousands of these marching camps across Britain, right? And they all date from after AD 43. We haven't got a single marching camp from before AD 43. Whenever we come across camps, and we'll do a whole talk about these later, right? We don't need to go any further with this because we'll be doing a lot of this stuff, right? Nobody needs to look at this up. But when we talk about marching camps, they were only usually used for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, right? The reason why I wanted to find the one at Landrin.Common was because at Landrin.Common, which is in the centre of Wales, there's dozens of marching camps, and you can clearly see them today by aerial photography. And these dozens of marching camps were done by practicing Roman soldiers to practice how to build a marching camp, right? And they were only used for a couple of days, and then they moved on. But the signs for these marching camps are still there thousands of years later. There's a number of different marching camps here, just on this one slide. The point is that none of these marching camps survive at all from the period of Julius Caesar. So when we think about the problem of absence, Roman military archaeology, the Romans usually leave. The Romans usually leave. Statement: marching camps. We don't have a single one from the period of Julius Caesar. They would leave ditches that would clearly be seen thousands of years later, like the ones in Scotland. There's none of that. Ramparts, the agger. So what we've got there in that one example. In the screen there, you can see the black bit there, which is the fall of the rampart, the agger itself, right? And then beyond that, on the southern side, you've actually got the ditch itself. Nothing like this survives from the period of Julius Caesar. So that is the problem. Again, no confirmed Caesar era marching camps in Britain. You could answer this by saying why. They're short campaigns. The campaigns of Julius Caesar may have only stepped foot in Britain for a period of a couple of months in 55 and a couple of months in 54. Temporary camps were dismantled. They would probably not had ditches. Marching camps may have been around the coast, so the Romans stayed near the coast. So that's why the marching camps are no longer with us. They've eroded away. The point is that the absence of Roman marching camps gives us a big problem in the period of Julius Caesar. Were they marching camps in a later sense, where you've actually got clearly banks and ditches? You can type in marching camps. There's thousands of them across Britain after AD 43, but there's nothing from Julius Caesar. The frustration that there's nothing, right? That might tell us that the marching camps had no ditches, they had no banks. And what they may have been is as follows: most Roman soldiers in the later period, maybe at the time of Julius Caesar, actually carried two bits of wood. And those two bits of wood would actually create a defense around the site. So you get two sticks, you could cross them over and you could put them in the ground, and that would work as a defensive work, right? That's probably all they were, therefore leaving no signs in the archaeology. So whereas the archaeologists might be looking for marching camps like this for the period of Julius Caesar, it's likely that they never existed, because they were camps that were just bits of wood, and then they would pick up the bits of wood and march on. A marching camp was technically only used for 1 or 2 nights. So why are the ones from AD 43 still around when the ones from Julius Caesar are not around anymore, right? So all of these really key questions, right? And we're sort of answering them as we go along. So we know about this. We know that there's no sieges attested in the archaeological record. Any sieges in 99% of cases of Iron Age forts across Britain, right? Lots of people say, oh, you know, there's an Iron Age hill fort there. The Romans besieged it, and then we look in the archaeology. There's no evidence at all. So you could actually say that there's one thing here saying that maybe the marching camps built by the Romans later on, they were used by other Roman activity, and they destroyed them. But that's unlikely, because usually when Romans built a marching camp, they would build a new one. They wouldn't build another. They wouldn't use the existing template. This is why on Landrin Nod Common and in Neath in West Wales, there's loads of marching camps. And before you say it, Will, at Getley Gaia, Will's beloved Getley Gaia, there's loads of practice marching camps north of Getley Gaia, but you can clearly see them today. That's the point. But the ones from Julius Caesar you can't, simply because they were probably not like the later marching camps. They were just two bits of wood in the ground and they would march on. So absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but it limits certainty of what we're looking for in the archaeology. So what's happened is that people have gone out looking for something that's not there and it was never there, right? Because people did things differently in different periods. And the other thing as well is, it might be, Margaret, if you're not building a bank and a ditch around something, nobody's attacking you. You don't feel the need to build these impressive marching camps with banks and ditches which were created in one night, simply because nobody's attacking you. And this is the thing. So back to this very illustration in front of us. So archaeology of resistance, chariot warfare. We know that chariots existed, right? But have we got any chariot evidence in southeastern England, right? No. We've got wheel rut. We could find real ruts, but we haven't found any of them. We might find bits of metal fittings, but actually, as chariots being found in the archaeological record in Kent, we haven't found any. Right. So, did they use chariots, or is it just Julius Caesar talking about it? So, Julius Caesar describes chariots, but were they actually used? And the other thing as well is, what would they be in battle? You know, Margaret, I've actually struggled with this. Right, Margaret, can I bully you again? Because there's not many people to talk to tonight, but I want to bully you again, Margaret. So, the cliffs of Dover. What would be growing above the cliffs of Dover? What would you think in your own mind?
What would be growing?
Yeah, what's growing there?
Would there be trees back then?
How are you going to get a chariot through trees? Yeah, next.
Well, I mean, they wouldn't have landed at Dover because they would have been a prime target for people upon the cliffs. They would have been chucking spears down at them, wouldn't they? So it wouldn't have been.
But from one of Julius Caesar's. Yeah, but from one of Julius Caesar's descriptions, I'll be doing this in another presentation, and Will said it as well. From one of Julius Caesar's descriptions, that above the White Cliffs of Dover, there were chariots going back and forth, right? And to be honest with you, that doesn't make sense, because why? It just doesn't. And the other thing as well is, you've got a load of you've got a load of vessels coming over to Britain, right? How were they pre-warned? All these different things, and so again, we're thinking. I've always had a gut thing, right? When you look at illustrations like this, you're thinking, well, where are the trees? Where's the real landscape, right? And also, an illustration like this is completely wrong, because people are going to be going back and forth. There's going to be mud. It's going to be rutted through. There's going to be other stuff going on. Yeah, I know that. I've got sheep. You've these little sheep going back and forth in one area. They soon, and these are little sheep with their little hooves, right? Human beings do have human beings offer lots of evidence on the ground. And the other thing as well is, with marching camps, you would have evidence of entrances and things if they were clearly arranged in a military way. So again, what we're moving on to is, when we actually start thinking about all of this, is that we think about other things that are sort of there in the archaeological record. And the other things that are there in the archaeological record is that we're going to go back to this image here, right? There's a tribe in the heart of England, right, called the Catavalani tribe, right? The Catavalani tribe, suddenly, after 54 BC, they get very, very powerful, right? They become one of the most powerful tribes in Britain, right? It's said that Cassivellaunus of the Catavalani tribe was one of those people that sort of held off the Romans in the River Thames, right? And we'll talk about that again. But the Catavalani tribe get very, very wealthy. Why do they get very, very, very wealthy? Just within a few moments of Julius Caesar leaving, what is actually happening, right? So again, it's like that. It's like that thing that there are happenings, there are events. There's a shift of power in Britain, right? It's almost as if the Catavalani have erupted into importance after their interaction with Julius Caesar and this figure Cassivellaunus, which we'll have a talk about. Cassivellaunus is and the Cassivellaunus as well, as a figure in history, is known only from Julius Caesar's works. So the Catavalani people in the archaeological record get very wealthy. They're seen to be building more and more important settlements. Why? And that's the question, why? So if we go back to the images again, hang on, what's going on here? Hang on, let's go there. Occasionally this happens. I don't know why. Right, okay, there, right. So we go there. Let's just go back again. Remember, we've seen all this. We're looking about all this. We're looking at the evidence. We're looking at this information, and we're thinking, right, okay. So the Catavalani people, actually, there's a shift of power. And the other thing as well is, it gets really interesting, is that burials in Britain, there's a shift of what's being buried with people. Instead of burials like this, right, people are being buried in this way, but they're being buried with amphora, they're being buried with Roman Samian ware, they're being buried with Roman beakers, they're being buried with Roman coins, they're being buried with all of those things. Why is that happening? If your community has just been aloof to the Roman world, suddenly there's this social shift. There's elite burials with continental goods, things that are Roman and respected, right? And now you're starting to think about something else. You're thinking, right, okay, there's this Roman invasion. These people start to respect Rome. They can see the power of Rome. They're thinking, right, okay, trade is good with Rome. We can see how powerful Julius Caesar is. So what we're going to do is that Britain is becoming a place that the Romans are aware of. Britain's becoming known to Rome. And so what's happening with these places is that these are not used anymore. They don't need to be used. There's a shift in what people are doing in Britain, right? There really is. There's a huge shift. They don't need these sites. You know, they can see that there needs to be an absence of using these types of sites, and we're going to come on to this specific site in a minute. It's actually in Wales. But before we actually come on to this site itself, hang on a minute. Before we actually come on to this site itself, we've got to sort of conclude on everything that we've talked about. So the conclusion is: did Julius Caesar really invade Britain? So the archaeological verdict is, Margaret, you writing this down? Yes, but briefly, very briefly. And what was the engagement? Julius Caesar had to go home and say he fought loads of battles. He had to say there was chariots, right? Whether they were there or not, he had to say something, right? And there's not a lot in the records to say that many people died in the Roman army. And that's the thing, that if there's fighting, then where are these people buried? So there's limited military engagement. Margaret, let's bully you again. What's Julius Caesar known for?
Being a bully.
Not philandering and what's that?
Being a bully.
Yeah, he was. So being a bully, he's fighting a lot.
Yeah.
So, but there's limited military engagement. We don't hear. Well, there's one big battle, right, which we will talk about coming up in the future. But then that's it, involving Cassivelanos and the Catavellano tribe, right, and the River Thames, and that's it.
Did he take Cativellaunus' son back to Rome to educate him, or have I made that up?
You may have made that up. However, the point is that limited military engagement with very few Roman casualties in an enemy landscape, right? That's really odd. So, we are going to actually come back to, Will, for example, we are actually going to come back to this, right? This is not the end of this tonight. So we've got lots of things. So, but the point is, the results of all of this are as follows. So the British thing is a major psychological story on behalf of Julius Caesar, right? So I think what I need to do now is I need to balance this out a little bit, right? And how I balance this out is as follows, right? Okay. Nothing of Julius Caesar survives. There's very little to no archaeological evidence, right? But what we are left with is suddenly Britain comes on the map of the Roman radar. It's suddenly there. Things just don't happen to occur from nowhere, right? Suddenly, Rome is in the sphere of Britain, and Britain is in the sphere of Rome. And it happens to have happened at around this time, 54 BC. So we bring Julius Caesar back into this. So all of this is having a major psychological and political impact on the Roman world, particularly in the north, right? But there's one thing that we can all agree, Margaret, is this is not a conquest. Julius Caesar said it was a conquest. But
maybe they were invited.
He was a damn right liar.
Could they have been invited over by some of the tribal leaders? Mainly with the
now that's what we don't have. That's what we don't have, Margaret. That's what we do not have. But when we talk about Claudius, the Romans are invited in to give the Romans an excuse to invade in AD 43. Yes. So, but Julius, there's nothing about that in Julius. The problem is there's lots of things that don't look right with Julius Caesar, but there's lots of things that do, but there's lots of things that don't look right, right? Was he fighting all these tribes, or was the thing about fighting tribes and having no casualties or very few casualties he was invited over, and they had a jolly somewhere, and they all went back, and his ships got broken and damaged. Yeah, we can believe that because it's a choppy coastline. So when we'll just look at this site to finish off for like 10 minutes, and we'll be finished. So Julius Caesar's legacy, again, we'll look at this in the near future. Open Britain to Roman knowledge. Suddenly it's on the map. It set the stage for Claudius's invasion in AD 43, but I'm going to argue massively when I get to Caligula, that Caligula did invade Britain. I'm going to use the same logic that we've done today. Right, so we've looked at the landing spots, we've looked at some evidence, haven't really looked at much of Julius Caesar's stuff, but what I'd like to do, I'd like to add something else in, which takes us onto another level, right? And it's as follows. This is a site known as Dinorban, right? And Dinorban itself is so far away from Julius Caesar, it's unbelievable, right? It's in northeast Wales, and it's one of the largest and most heavily defended hill forts in Wales. It'd been occupied from the late Bronze Age, so approximately from 400 years ago, right? It was massively refortified in the late Iron Age. Now, where lots of Iron Age sites in southern England are being abandoned, this is refortified in northeast Wales. Why is this being refortified in northeast Wales around the same time that Julius Caesar invades the south of England, right? And then basically goes away. So Dinorban shows what Britain looked like away from Julius Caesar's landing beaches. Powerful, organized, and prepared for what? Now, we're not saying this is anything, then they're not preparing these, but some of these sites are refortified, and why? That's the question, why? So what we've got with this site, as they've excavated it, and we're looking at these post holes to give you this idea of what's going on in the site. Some of these sites are actually occupied within, whereas some of the ones in Iron Age, southern England, there's not major towns and cities in the hill forts because they're just used for animals and storage of grain and stuff. However, if we think about this is what Dinorban itself, so by around 50 BC, right? This is enhanced, right? It's made greater, right? And you're thinking about there, outer ditch, and these are sort of rebuilt, and it's sort of looking really impressive. So these are timber-laced ramparts. So in other words, you can see there the rampart there. You've got vertical and you've got horizontal members. It's made solidly out of stone. You've got really complex entrances. Well, all of this is going in when places like Maiden Castle are no longer being used in southern England. Hod Hill no longer being used in southern England. This is really interesting, right? So this is contemporary evidence with what's going on with Julius Caesar. So away from Julius Caesar, right? In 54 BC, there's other things going on in Britain, and this is one of the things in archaeology and history. There's other things going on that archaeologists don't like to put into the history. So I've said everything that we've said about Julius Caesar, but in other parts of Britain, right? They're doing things like this. In other parts of Britain, they're still using the brocks in Scotland, right? And there's villages around them, and they've got wonderful communities going on at these brocks in other parts of Britain, right? When in fact it's said that one of these leaders of the Orcadian people met Julius Caesar and gave him tribute. But you can immediately think, Margaret, can't you, that this is a reaction to what Julius Caesar is doing, but it's not. It's so far away from Julius Caesar, these people are not going to feel threatened. The key point is that Dinorban wasn't reacting to Julius Caesar. It was part of Britain already preparing for something, and we don't really know what it was preparing for. There was something else going on internally in Britain, right? And you're thinking about sort of something like this, and look at that. So this is displaying power at a stage when lots of hill forts in southern England have been abandoned. So this type of site, aligns with Julius Caesar's description of Britain as fragmented into tribes, frequently at war and militarily confident. That's the thing. So when we're talking about Kent, right, he's also got other information to say that in other parts of Britain, different things are going on, right? These are not just primitive farmers. These are not the type of people that he's seeing in Kent. There's other things going on in Britain. So what we've got with these types of sites as well, you'll be interested to hear, Margaret and Gina and everybody else, that at these sites in the heart of Wales, you're finding pottery that's coming all the way influentially, if not from the continent itself. You've got advanced metalworking. People are actually, from the archaeology, we're seeing all these post holes. So people are actually sort of living in these sites when nobody was living at places like Maiden Castle at this stage in 54 BC. So there's a contradiction of the archaeological evidence in Britain. It's not just one story. So when we started this off, it was like, oh, you know, these people are reacting. They've all got the same idea. They're reacting to Julius Caesar, and that's just all that's going on. But it's not. Certain things are really complex, right? So bits of Britain are very militarized along the south coast. They become very Romanized, and that's what we could say. So Britain was not one society. You could say that Julius Caesar Julius Caesar come across many different societies in Britain, and it's very likely that that's why Julius Caesar didn't go any further than the River Thames when he came over to Britain, because psychologically there was too much going on. Even without Roman boots in Wales, news travels via trade routes, tribal diplomacy, hostages, and tribute system. Margaret's mentioned that. Hill forts refortification may reflect increased anxiety, power, consolidation, and status competition. Now, Margaret, you know, at the beginning we said, where's the archaeological evidence? Things changing in other parts of Britain, they're changing for a reason. And why are they changing for a reason? This is something that I'm not really sure I agree with, but we'll make the statement. This site known as Dinorban in northeast Wales, this could be a place of people watching from a distance and preparing for something. Are they preparing for a possible invasion by the Romans? Is that nonsense, or is that something? Or are they afraid of something else? Because at this stage, the population of Britain's growing. There's a lot of internal warfare, a lot of internal stress. And by people calling to Rome in AD 43, they're calling because there are things going on in Britain that people don't like. So Julius Caesar, closing now, in Julius Caesar's expeditions, puts Britain on Roman's strategy map. Did people feel that across Britain? Was it part of their thinking, right? So hill forts like Dinorban would eventually be abandoned and not destroyed by the Romans, but at this stage they were getting ready for something. So when we look at AD 43, not next week, but in a few weeks' time, maybe a bit more than a few weeks' time, this leads naturally into the AD 43 invasion, the Roman military push into Cymru Wales, but that's another thing altogether. And then any other remaining hill forts would be abandoned. So if we look at this little thing here and this little cross section, Dinorban proves Britain was strong, organized, and defensive. Defending against what? Question mark. Hill forts show local power. They're showing individual power, not necessarily that they're Roman invasion, which is probably, they're not showing that they're worried about a Roman invasion. They're showing that they can stand up by themselves. They're really powerful people. Caesar encountered a Britain already capable of resistance, and Julius Caesar did not have the military to go any further into Britain because he was okay with what he was finding, but any more, it might be too much for Rome to deal with. Archaeology supports limited Roman impact beyond the southeast. So, in other words, when we're talking about Julius Caesar, we see other things going on in Britain, but what does that mean? There's changes going on. And what we are going to do is sites like Denauban, they will come back into our discussions, because what we will be doing is we'll be looking at the Roman period evidence, at reusing these sites. There's lots of reuse of sites like Denauban. There's lots of archaeology. And again, we're looking at this body, and what you would see, this would be pre 54 BC, and afterwards, a burial like this would contain lots of Roman goods. And again, looking out, sort of thinking with the chariot thing, thinking about no sieges. These were not mentioned really by Julius Caesar. And obviously, this gives you stylistically an idea of what you might think with evidence. Hordes, obviously, a later image. This is from Rome, again, over 50,000 coins, but obviously there are lots of coins from the period of Julius Caesar from 54 BC being found, a lot more, and obviously the locations of the landscape. And it's again something like this, when we were tracking the Julius Caesar's invasions, it was like, oh, we weren't shown that there was lots of sort of rises in land and sort of lots of river valleys. You know, we were told about the River Medway, and that was it. And we'll come on to that another day, and Pegwell Bay, and obviously all the way coming back to these tribes, Catavilani, and you're thinking about the Cantiaci tribe, then you're looking all the way to North Wales, and you're thinking, Denauban is way away from this Julius Caesar thing, but what's going on? There's lots of internal things. In other words, what we're saying is that the Romans weren't the be all and end all. Life carried on in Britain with or without Julius Caesar. If there was no Julius Caesar thing, things would have carried on, things would have happened, right? And then the big question is, Margaret, right? I think Andy mentioned it earlier on, right? Is the evidence that we're seeing part of these groups of people fleeing from Julius Caesar, and that's the actual story, right? And then they're going back to fight over for Vercingetorix. That's the evidence, right? That's the real influence. And then people start to realize that the Romans might come one day, and we're going to do something about it. Maybe that's what's going on. So obviously, back to this guy. This is what today's been about, Julius Caesar. It's 9:41. I had no idea it would go this long. And there's me back in Shetland with my long hair. And my God, I've had a shave. I look right hippie there. Right. Okay, then. I look at Margaret. I look a bit like you.
I was just thinking
Right.
that.
Yeah, I do, did I? Look, yeah, I do look at Margaret. Let's just leave it. By the way, your hair's a lot more tidier than mine. So, right, okay then. So we're going to call that a day now, and we're going to stop the screen. And I've just my friend Lee, he's come out with a book on martial arts, and he said everyone who buys a book on martial arts, they get a free haircut. Right, but you've got to come to Barry to get a free haircut. So I bought him a copy of a book. So Andy, if you want a free haircut, let me know. Right, okay then. Talking about haircuts, you don't need one either, Will. You don't do shaving. Right. But by the way, I'm really upset that I haven't got any more Santa gigs until next year.
Oh.
Right. Talking about Santa. Do you know, I got to be honest with you. Judith's reaction earlier on when she heard a dog barking, that was definitely from Fraggle Rock. What was the name of the Fraggle Rock dog, Michelle?
Sprocket.
Sprocket. That's right. Right. Sprocket was she's being a Fraggle. She was upset being bitten by a Sprocket. Right, Gina. Anything you want to say, love?
No, thank you.
Cool. Right. I'm glad you came back, Judith. Anything you want to say?
Only that it's such an interesting perspective that you don't really hear much else of, do you? And I wondered if some of the people that Andy thought might have come here, I wonder if they'd escaped, come here to start the rebellion against Rome from here. Just because, I mean, that happens now.
Sort of like
it? Iranians have come here to try and get rid of the Ayatollahs from Iran, haven't they? And all kinds of different groups they've always come here. The British Isles have always been, let's go there while we think of a plot to get rid of whoever it was over there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the Polish army and the French did it in the Second World War, and they were very successful. So, you know,
and Himmler tried to come here.
Weird thing,
that's what he was doing. Was it Himmler?
Yeah.
It was one of them.
Oh yeah, Rudolf Hess in 1942.
That's
Yeah,
it.
we'll just leave that one. We'll leave that one. But the point is, I think Andy's point and your point is that I think if you look at the Polish, you suddenly the Polish army is completely beaten. You know, within a month of the German invasion in 1939, but they managed to rebuild. They managed to rearm themselves, and they've got a large field army on the ground in 1944. At the point that the Germans are on retreat, and they do extremely well. And this is a good example of that. That Britain is a place that you can get yourself together, and you can you can reorganize yourselves against problems, and it's always been a place for that. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Anything else, Judith?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Right. What about you, Will?
Observation. Dover, the chalk cliffs. Trees don't grow very well in chalk. You have grasslands because you have the accumulation of wind-borne soil and that's beds down. It's like having trees growing up a mountain in a rock crevice because soil is blown in by the wind. The seed comes in, it lands, and it grows out, and you get a tree that's 150 feet long. But actually, on Dover itself, you wouldn't have had trees even back 2,000, 3,000 years ago. It was grassland. You might have had the odd pit of scrub. But the other side of it, Dover was visible on a clear day, as is France. You could see to Calais, and Calais could see Dover on a clear day. And it's been that way for thousands of years. So they knew Britain existed. Just not due time to come and say,
yeah, but they knew Britain existed. But the point is that you know, they knew Scandinavia existed. But the point is now it's sort of in the Roman sort of world. It's in the Roman sphere. You sort of, there's some link, and that's what we've been talking about today. So,
yeah, and we're only
anything else, Will?
We're only 20 miles away from the coast of France. And considering the Mediterranean's a bit more than 20 miles, Rome has been sailing up and down for a long time. And 20 miles is nothing. It's a few oarsmen and a few ships and getting from A to B. So
no,
that's all it is.
That's true. Anyway, thank you for that, Will.
Talk.
Thank you. Right, who's next? Thank you. Who's next? We've done Drina. We got Margaret left and Andy. Who should we go first? Who's the most exciting? Oh, Margaret, I've really said it. Margaret, Andy won't be upset. Right, go on, Margaret.
Well, it's got to be Margaret.
They say Julius Caesar was a military genius and a politician. And what were his famous words? I came, I saw, and I conquered.
Yeah, good point.
And I went away.
And that's what he
that was on page 2.
Yeah. At what point did he say that? I came, I saw, and I conquered. Was that when he was in Gaul?
Isn't that what they said about sort of Michael Caine? Not many people know that or something. That he didn't actually say that. I can't remember. But the fact of the matter is, the other thing as well is, it's going to be said in his tongue, isn't it, in Latin? So the interpretation he came, he saw, and conquered, that's going to be added, and so on. And then you've got to think about, was actually Julius Caesar a military genius?
Would he
was pretty good in.
Yeah. He was a military man and also a politician. He sounds like quite a clever man.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I think Julius Caesar could probably be compared with Alexander the Great. I don't want to compare him with Adolf Hitler, but I think we can compare him with Alexander the Great. Julius Caesar could be said to be a bit like Napoleon. He had a sense of hubris. Napoleon had a sense of he was indestructible, right? Julius Caesar felt he was indestructible. And eventually both of them ended up being kicked out of what they were doing. Obviously, Napoleon was never, he obviously lost Waterloo and that was it. But the fact of the matter is, it was a sense of hubris. And lots of these people have a sense of hubris. Alexander the Great, he thought he was indestructible, but he died. He didn't complete his plan. Good example of Adolf Hitler. He definitely didn't complete his plan. But the point is that, like lots of these people, they don't stop when they should have. And I think, in contrast, some of the most interesting figures in history was Robert E. Lee, when he actually started commanding the of the Army of Northern Virginia, not Northern Virginia, the Northern Army of the Confederacy. Oh God, there's a title there. I'm missing it. But when Julius Caesar took command of that army, not Julius Caesar. Start again. Missing it. Right. 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 Okay. Start again. When Robert E. Lee commanded the Army of Virginia, right? He said that for the 3 years of him commanding that army, he knew that the Confederacy was going to lose, right? Some of the last words he said before he surrendered at Pocomoke's Junction on 9th of April, 1865, was that he knew he was going to lose, right? He was just trying to get the best deal he could for his army. And he'd been thinking that for 3 years, right? That's the complete opposite of hubris, right? So obviously hubris, when you're thinking you're indestructible, right? Some people know that they're going to lose, right? Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar thought they would never lose, and they did, because they died or they were assassinated.
And do you think he did it all for the good of Rome, or just for the good of himself?
He did it all for the good of himself. He did it for Julius Caesar thought he could never lose. He did it all for himself. Everything that Julius Caesar did was for himself. He didn't do it for the glory of Rome. He did it for himself.
Well,
if you want to compare that with, if you want to compare that with somebody like, if you want to compare Julius Caesar with, oh God, it's just Julius Caesar was somebody who just kept going, right? And did he want to conquer the world? No, he didn't want to conquer the world for Rome. He just wanted to survive, and that's what he was doing until he was assassinated. Right. Okay. Nothing else, Margaret?
Nope. No, thank you.
God, how the hell did I get that? Yeah. Anyway, carry on. Andy, anything you'd like to say?
No, only to kind of carry on what Judith was saying. Really, is that they if you look at our history that was known, it's people migrating here for whatever reason, and then going back across and things. So it's nothing new. So that I'm sure they came and went and came and went and came and went. For whatever reasons. We know they've traded with Europe for thousands of years before that. So.
Yeah. So this is all true. But back to Julius Caesar. It was just part of his plan. He just wanted to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that given the time of year, I think he came and had a look, and maybe intended to come back, but he didn't last much longer after that, did he? So
he couldn't be asked.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They had more pressing things, didn't they? Had to go back to Rome to get stabbed. So.
Well, the Ides of March, you've got to be very wary of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that must have been starting to brew. So,
how old was he when he died?
Exactly.
Was he still quite a young man? I can't remember.
56. Was he 56?
I thought he was in his 50s, something like that. Yeah.
I'm going to look that out. I've got to work that one out just in case I'm right.
When did he
Julius
get
Caesar,
embroiled
50
with Cleopatra? When was that?
Just before he died.
well,
Was that
just
after?
before he died. No, he didn't get embroiled with her when he was dead. Right, Julius Caesar, how old was he? Here we go. Yeah, he was born on July 100 years BC, right? Oh my God, he was 56.
Oh,
Right.
well done.
Well done.
Oh no, I was out by it. 55.
Oh,
I was
no.
out by a year.
Well, you give or take
no.
a year in those days. They probably weren't that accurate.
Oh, hang on a minute. I was so close. Hang on, I was so close because he was born on the 12th or 13th of July.
Right.
100 years BC, right? And it was the 15th of March, 44 BC. So I was out just by 3 months. You can
He
give
was
me
in
that,
his
can you?
56th year, was
Yes,
he?
absolutely.
His
Oh, he was in
56th
his
year.
56th year. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
so you're just about right.
yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. And is a partner Cleopatra? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. Nothing wrong with a bit of Cleopatra. Not that I would know anything about that. When did he meet? Final question: when did he meet Cleopatra? So, somewhere between 51 BC and when he died.
It was, see, just before he died.
Yeah.
Just before he died. You've got to remember that bit. So, right on that moment. Well, we've managed to mention Robert E. Lee, Adolf Hitler, Julius Caesar, and
Cleopatra.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
And
Just
yeah.
remember Karl
Oh,
Marx.
and Will wants to say one
Marx.
last thing.
Right, yeah. Just remember Karl Marx and Lenin came to London, spent their time in the British Library, and they concocted the communist system, and then they went back, and then they got knocked off.
So
Hang on,
shouldn't read
Karl,
books,
hang on.
really, should we?
Hang on a minute. I didn't know Karl Marx was assassinated. He died a normal death, didn't he?
Yeah, poison.
Oh, well, yes, it's
Was his wife's cooking?
normal, isn't it? It's just, happens every week. Whilst cooking.
Yeah, just shut up, Carl, and eat your tea.
God.
Yeah. Not you, Carl, the other Karl Marx.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
On that
Aye.
on that
Bombshell.
note, we'll see you all next Tuesday, and anyone who wants to join us on Wednesday. Oh, by the way, it's 9:56. I'm being warned. It's the number 56. If anyone lottery number, put it on 56.
Yeah.
56.
It only goes to
56.
50, doesn't it?
Yeah, they extended it.
Don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah.
Changing it.
Right.
They
They
might get
extended
56.
they extended it to 56. Right. Okay then. On that moment, what is any of you 56? Right. Anyway, we're gonna
No.
crack
I
on.
wish.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, right, we're going to call it a night. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. So, night, Andy, Drina, Margaret, Judith, and Will, and we'll everybody else who knows us, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right on.
Bye.
Safe
Oh, and
travels.
Fraggle. Let the music play. Worries for another day. Oh, that's it. It's gone. Night, guys. And yes, my nose is getting redder each week. No. Yeah, there it is. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow, Wednesday, 7:10 ish. Kate will be there with a dog, and weird, isn't it? She calls herself Fraggle, and then the dog back, and she's like, "Oh my God, I can't stay here because the dog." Says a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, so nothing in the chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on that window, 1, 2,